Welcome to this Wonderwell rig review. I had a lot of you requesting that I do a breakdown of previous and upcoming rigs, and I saw this Yamal rig by Benaissa Abdel Jalil, so I figured I would just open it up and give it a breakdown. So yeah, hope you enjoy. So the first thing I'm going to do when opening up this rig is I'm just going to go to Windows General File Path Editor, and I'm going to repath this to the texture folder when I download it, and that should repath the textures. The other thing I noticed is that it seems like the upper teeth are offset, just an accidental value, so I would just remove that. And then I'm just gonna turn off the lights and the anti-aliasing just because, you know, I wanna see what the actual frame rate and performance is. So it seems like we're getting a solid 24 FPS just right out of the gate. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the layout control. Now this is obviously just for placement, rotation, starting location, or if you're doing a game cycle or anything like that, moving the character in world space. So on here, we simply just have a bunch of visibility switchers, which is cool, very nice. I believe we also have different hairstyles. So if I hide the hat and hide hairstyle 1, I believe we have hairstyle 2, which looks very cool, and hairstyle 3, all very nice. All of them should deform properly with the head. Very cool stuff. Something I would recommend is either having a control, whether it be near the head or on this face picker, which I've looked pretty extensively and have not seen, or what we did with the Leo and G rigs and Vincent is just place it on the layout control and just have a visibility switcher, whether it be an enum or just an on and off. For me, I prefer enum because there's no reason to have multiple hairs on at the same time. So if you're assuming a either or, you could just add the visibility of these 3 hairstyles as a enumerator, which will toggle between them. And then you could obviously have the hat as a on-off visibility too. And the layout control is just easy. Everyone clicks on it, so you can just assume that it'll be there. But you know, that's just something either you as a user could add, which I could show in a later video on how to add your own switchers, or could be in a future update. So yeah, just a quick little note there. Aside from the hairstyles, which all look super cool, I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to the default. We will just start here. It looks like we have the cigar rig, which is just a very simple, nice little control with scale that allows you to pretty much do whatever you would need with a cigar. Very cool, very nice. We also have the suitcase rig, has a nice pivot from the handle, as well as a nice hinge to open and shut the briefcase, and even a stack of cash. So very cool little money texturing. Very nice looking. And overall, the model is just super cool. Simple, but flexible. So moving on to the base rig. Always going to start off at the center of gravity, the basis of all body mechanics. Works as intended, works as I assumed. I believe we have the ability to toggle IK and FK spines. An important note here is that in FK, we do have this FK hips, which is very, very important, especially when posing the character's spine. Being able to just sweeten that pose with a little hip rotation or what have you without having to counter that is worth gold, especially with walk cycles. Being able to just, you know, rotate those hips with the feet, very, very important. So very nice that we have that. And then the same with the spine. We got that lower hip movement. I believe we have stiffness attribute, which kind of controls the fall off between the spine. We got that middle IK corrector, and then we have the IK chest, which all works very nice. I believe we also have volume preservation. Yeah, so as you stretch the spine, the center is going to scale in slightly. You can probably see it much more extreme here. So this is very, very nice. If you turn stretchy down, it's going to keep the spine from stretching past its limits. So yeah, all the flexibility you would need in a FK and IK spine chain. So following on down, I believe we have hip controls, which are actually quite nice when you're doing like super extreme posing like this. Very high legs, being able to kind of soften that a little bit and kind of get that leg out there just to break up some of the penetration here and keep it from feeling so stiff. You can see the difference there. Oftentimes makes a pretty big difference. And we should have that on both sides. So we also have the IK-FK legs, so I can show these both at the same time. FK, IK, very cool. We have all kinds of IK feet controls, which I will go into in a second, but it seems we have extra controls on the leg, which is very nice, again, for tweaking and kind of cleaning up those extra shapes. And then we go on down, and we should just have a simple chain here. There's not too much you can do with a FK foot other than just a simple chain movement. So over here on the IK side, we have follow root and follow main. So follow main, if I move the main root control, it's going to follow along. If I turn this off, you're going to have pure world space location. This is perfect for doing walk cycles. If you have the root moving forward, you can turn that on and really clean up those arcs and get those feet sticking when they're planted. So we got a cool swivel. This is for just tweaking the pose, tweaking the movement of the pull vector without having to grab it and move it around. If you have your arcs all clean and you just want to kind of additively twist it in over a few frames and twist back out, it works a lot better than doing an animation layer or something like that. So want to add that we also have auto follow on the pull vector, which is very cool. So when you rotate the foot, it should follow along quite nicely. I believe that can be turned off by turning the follow to 0, or you can do, somewhere in between with like a 5 or so. So that's very cool. And then you have the lock. This is perfect for if you're doing undo real quick. If you're doing any kind of an animation where a character is on their knees, let me go ahead and turn this back to, there we go. Any kind of an animation where a character is on their knees and you want to have them moving around and doing all kinds of cool, super dope things, it really does not help to have these knees floating around. It really kills the weight. So a common trick is to turn this lock on, place the knees in a physical, nice body mechanics pose, and then you can pivot the knees from there. But you will need to turn the follow off, unlike what I just did. So now that the follow is turned off, I can move these knees around, really get that nice movement, the body mechanics, but the knees are going to stay in place. So that is very, very helpful, very cool. So continuing on with the foot, we have our swivel, we have our roll. So the cool thing about this roll here is that it's based off of these start angle and end angle values. So if you notice, the foot is pivoting from the center here until you get to 30. That's this roll start angle. So if I was to move this down to 0, you're going to notice that we start pivoting from the toe at 2.5 instead of 30. But if I do 100, you're going to be able to roll, I guess I need to do 200 here. There we go. You're going to be able to roll all the way to 100 before pivoting up onto the toe. So this is very cool. It gives a lot of flexibility if you want to have that foot peeling off, and gives you the ability to tweak those values to really get something that works well for you. So if it was me, I would probably do this at like 50 and then maybe 80 And that's just going to give a little more of a peel before you start pulling off there. So, but yeah, that's just personal preference. So you have your rock, which is your side to side stretchy. Now that is for the actual IK itself, getting that nice squash and stretch. If I turn this off, you're going to see that the leg stays put. This also has its benefits for body mechanic shots that aren't super cartoony. We also have the anti-pop. So this isn't going to be seen so much with me just moving the controller around, but a lot of times in animations you have, this is frame 1, and I can just set a key here. I'm going to turn anti-pop off. So let's say this is frame 1, this is frame 2, and you're going to get that leg pop right there. So it's like that leg pop. Anti-pop is just going to help soften that. You see that? There's no more pop. And the reason for that is it kind of scales the leg as it comes in, which keeps that knee from just popping over one frame. So I highly recommend this. I think it's a fantastic feature that a lot of rigs have and super useful for me. Obviously we have leg length 1, leg length 2, and then we have fatness 1 and 2, which I believe is just scale. And then volume preservation. So if I turn stretchy back on, and I turn volume off, you're going to see that the leg no longer stretches when it goes too far. So normally I keep the volume on because it just feels more organic, more fleshy. So moving, I guess I forgot, we have the last thing is we have these foot pivot controls. Obviously slightly redundant with the sliders, but there's a lot of people who prefer to just rotate controls and have those rotation values. It also gives you the ability to kind of do things on more than one axis, whereas rule of thumb, most everything in here is done over one axis. So that's where these kind of come in, is being able to really get some organic foot roll, especially when the foot is peeling off. Oftentimes we peel off more of like at an angle like this, or maybe we peel off, you know, on an inside angle, which looks a lot nicer than just a normal foot roll. So there are uses for these, and more flexibility is always better when it comes to giving animators choices. So one thing I forgot here is we just have another tweaker control, so knee bendy, and then all the way through here we have nice scale, we have rotate, and we have twist, which kind of gives you anything and everything you would need for really getting like a nice cartoony pose on these legs. So very nice deformations there. So onward up the spine, we have the clavicle L. Moves around quite nicely. Shoulders are actually a very difficult thing to get correct. Oftentimes I look at the back of the shoulders, which his design is much more friendly towards good shoulder deformation because it's very flat across, but I look to see if the back moves upwards with the spine, which with his hair is limited, but still moves up a little bit, but very nice fall off, very nice deformation here. So it works quite well. Although you probably would want to get a little bit of translation in there just to kind of get a bit more of a offset pivot. So shoulders are nice. I also see a lot of issues with rigs when rotating the shoulders forward, with it kind of breaking the character, deforming the character oddly, but a decent range of motion here without looking too odd or breaking the pose. So very nice. We have our FK arm, which has its global. That's just going to change whether it rotates with the clavicle or if it stays rotated in world space. So most of the time I'm going to be working in global space the whole time. We got our bendies. We got our FK elbow, which is very nice. We can rotate it from all axes. And then we also have that very nice elbow pivot. So this also helps if you're having some sort of collision or intersection with an FK arm that maybe you want IK on the elbow. You're putting the elbow on the table for a few frames and you don't want to go to IK. You can kind of use this to just, you know, keep those interactions nice and crisp. We do have this watch, which actually deforms quite well with the wrist. There is a follow, so it can go from 0 to 10. 0 is going to keep it totally influenced by the wrist. And then if I do it at 10, I believe it's going to be fully influenced by the hand control. So obviously you don't want to go up to 10, but I did find that what was default here with a 2 actually felt quite nice because it moves with the hand, but inherits mostly the wrist animation. So that's quite cool, quite nice. This control here, I believe, is one of the most underrated controls that a rig can have. We have it on all of our Wonderwell rigs, and in my mind, it is one of the most handy and time-saving controls a rig can have, because fingers are just time-consuming to pose. They take forever. You can even have a pose library, but those pose library poses are not going to always perfectly deform the way you need in a shot. So this being able to control all of these little joints here with a fall off is, you know, you're always compressing and dragging and collapsing your fingers. So just being able to get this nice line of action through the fingers without having to touch more than one control is a huge time saver and helps a lot. So very cool that this control exists on this rig, and that we have these nice finger controls. They all work quite nice. I do believe we also have a spread, which is nice, and I believe we have just a universal fist pose. So even here, as you can see, this is the normal fist, and just adding a bit of curl and a bit of collapse here makes all the difference in the world with this nice fist pose. So yeah, highly recommend using this control, and I'm very glad that this rig has it. Very nice for making just a default pose without really moving the fingers at all. So 10 out of 10. So zeroing out this once more, we have the IK arm. So very similar to the IK leg, we are going to have our stretchy, we are going to have our follow chest. So turning this on, we are going to have rotation with the chest. If I turn that off, it's going to be world space, which is nice for the IK. Anti-pop, very similar to what I explained before. So all of this should be almost identical to the IK leg. So nothing crazy or new there. I was told that we do not have breathing controls yet, but that is intended for a future update. Whenever I talked to the creator, he told me that was planned. So be on the lookout for breathing controls, but until then, you can very easily get away with some cool breathing by just scaling this control. And then if you need to, obviously you can use your Animbot Temp Pivot, which is a trick I like to use, place it at the back of the neck, and then just rotate from here, which gives that like nice deep chest breathing. That combined with some chest scale offset should give you everything you would need for a nice breathing cycle. So that works until you get the actual breathing controls. Moving on to the face. So immediately seeing these face panels, I was not thrilled because I'm not a big face panel guy, but I quickly realized through posing that most of these controls are more of like general main tweakers, and you can do anything you need to without moving these. So this is kind of an either or kind of thing as far as I understand, which to me is great because I'm not a big fan of the face panel thing. But the fact that I can just strictly pose over here with all of these beautiful controls and not really have to care too much about this panel works. And the other beautiful part is if you like these face panels, you can also use it as well. So, or you can layer a little bit of both. So it gives you options. We have nice, flexible, fleshy. I like the fact that these tweakers are moving around, giving fall off on the lips. One thing I would suggest as an animator, which I like to build into my rigs, is when I do this extreme like smile, one thing that I find looks very odd at times. Let me zero this back out and I will just showcase. Whenever you smile or, you know, spread the corners of your mouth out like this, it often looks inorganic in CG rigs, and I think the big reason is because lips are very stretchy, very flexible. So as an animator, when you're animating this rig, I would highly suggest doing what you can to at the same time you pull out the corners, try to scale in the lips themselves. As you can see here, like immediately, you go from feeling very stiff and CG to all of a sudden the lips feel elastic and stretchy. I also look from this under angle because I like to see those lips pull back, because if you think about smiling, the lips like to wrap around the teeth. And you can even get more crazy with it because oftentimes lips are gonna taper. So they're gonna be more thin near the outside. They're gonna stay a little more thick on the inside. So kind of doing this number here, and then I'm just gonna zero this out, and then mirror. There we go. And zero. There we go. So this is a suggestion for maybe building into a blend shape in the rig. Or if you're an animator and you're wanting to animate with this rig, just thin those lips out in your posing so that you get this nice stretching effect. It could also just be a slider value on the lip corner itself that stretches when you pull. But to me, it adds a ton of fleshiness and just more control. So just something to think about in this rig. Is what I look at anytime I look at any kind of a rig, just to see what can be done with the face. So moving on to the jaw, very nice deformations here. I like that you can rotate on multiple axes, really, get some nice curvature in the face just by rotating the jaw. You can pull this, I believe this is this sneer control. And I like that there's a multitude of tweakers here because I'm not getting a ton from the base sneer control itself, but the fact that we have so many tweaker controls means that I can really build in some of that nice shaping that I want. I also found I get a lot more once I've moved this base corner control, really doing a lot of shaping with these smaller inner controls. Really helps build in some of that nice mouth shaping. And for me, I like to really pull these mouth corners in a lot whenever I'm posing. So doing that, rotate the teeth a little bit. I also like that we have these simple tweakers, IK tweakers, that just kind of pull the teeth around. I'm not a fan of a ton of teeth tweakers because it makes posing much harder. Oftentimes, all you ever need to do with teeth is hide the back or kind of make a nice curve shape with it. So the fact that it's simple, easy, is fine with me. Sometimes I prefer there will be a bend attribute in the teeth, which will kind of just bend it down, bend it up, and then curve it out or in. But this works perfectly fine, and I like the simplified nature of teeth because I don't like spending half my time just tweaking teeth controls. So the more simple, the easier to pose, the better for me. So very nice sneer deformation. Being able to control this curve is actually super important, and a lot of rigs sadly don't give you that flexibility. So the fact that I can control this is very nice. The nose, I did find, I believe, yeah, you gotta select that there, which is no big deal. You have the ability to translate this all over the place, rotate it, pose it. It's very nice. Build in that nice curvature in the face. So eyebrows as well. Very nice free translation on these. Works quite well. I really appreciated the attention to detail in the blend shape work here. The fact that you get this nice tight creasing when the brows come together, always just, it really sets a rig apart. Rigs that don't have this tight creasing, or it's very soft, falls off, really kind of kills the feature feel in a rig. So nice brow shapes really carry a rig. Also, these creasing under here feel phenomenal. So good job all the way around here. If I was looking to animate a shot in my spare time, I would be very tempted to use this rig just because of how flexible it is and how many nice, fun creases. Creases in the face, in my mind, are one of the easiest ways to get flexibility and squishiness in animation just always feels good. So the design in this rig is fantastic. I believe we have a fleshy eye attribute. You have eye shapers, very standard feature quality rig stuff here. I believe there's an eye tweaker, gives you the ability to pose. I believe there should be a blink. Yes, blink here. Squint, this is actually quite nice. I like to have this a lot in rigs, which is the wide and the squint, just to layer on a little bit of fleshiness. Even if I'm not blinking per se, if I am animating a shot and I just need to layer a little bit of squash and stretch in the eye mask area, using this is actually quite nice. So got nice corner control. And we do have a upper head squash. I feel like this works quite well. I believe we also have the middle head squash. One thing I did find missing was the lower head squash, which might be nice to pull out here a touch. But I did find that this doesn't seem to do what I thought it would. I assumed it would squish the lower half of the face, but it seems to just move. So that might be a bug, might be me not understanding it correctly, but I did find that I was missing the ability to kind of rotate the lower half of the face as a whole. Kind of a lower squash and stretch just for that, lip sync. But the fact that we have so much control in the jaw and it deforms so well, I wouldn't miss it too much in a shot, especially if I was doing a little scaling, upper and lower. I could get away with it, but having one of those lower squash and stretches would be very nice. So obviously we have a nice hat control, gives us the ability to pose. We also have nice hair tweakers. Probably would be more than enough to give us the ability to pose and animate this hair without having to spend too much time animating a bunch of different controls, which is nice. And then if you're using an overlapper or something like that, just overlapping these strands here is going to give a lot of life to the face. So yeah, overall, I really like this rig. I think that's most of the controls. If I'm giving it a rating, I give the character design a 9 out of 10. I give the modeling and the quality of model and the topology, because the topology flows quite well. There's edge loops where it needs to have edge loops. It has definition where it needs to have definition, but where it's just strictly deformation here, that's just like soft. The topology is fairly sparse, which means that you get those nice, smooth, soft skinning without too many blend shapes. So this is a blend shape free rig, which means that it's going to have pretty good performance. It's not going to chug, triggering a million different blend shapes at a time. So that is very nice. It could also work for a game engine if you were to work the skeleton hierarchy and bake down some of the deformers, but I don't believe it was intended to be a game rig, so it probably would not work out of the box. But if you're familiar with rigs and converting rigs to game engine, I would imagine you probably could, but I don't believe it's Unreal compatible at the moment. It definitely is not Blender compatible, but it works perfectly in Maya 2024 onward, is what I saw in the description. So if you're looking for a rig to use for a future shot, I would highly recommend this rig. Again, design 9 out of 10, modeling I would give an 8 out of 10. There could be a little more detail into the hair, maybe a little more detail on the facial, but overall, again, 8 out of 10. And then the rigging, I would give a solid 9 out of 10. The FPS is top notch. I really hesitate to use a rig that gives me less than 24 FPS, because in terms of speed, being able to actually efficiently animate a shot in today's day and age with today's computers, I think 24 FPS is the minimum you should be getting with a feature quality rig, especially for a student. who may not have the most powerful hardware. With a low-end computer, you might be running at 15. So I think that's the minimum. And anything worse than that is just going to have low-end computers running at 5, 10 FPS. And that's just almost unworkable when you're trying to learn animations. So this gets an A+ from me all the way around: performance, flexibility, quality. And yeah, I would highly recommend using this rig, and thanks for watching.